Tonight, the Ministry of Health introduces further restrictions on home quarantine after repeated violations by people who refuse to stay at home. One day after causing an emergency press conference on the part of the Commerce Minister, Andre De Carey says his work as chairman of the cannabis movement is done. And Moses Jabatis takes up the cause of farmers, saying it is disrespectful on the part of government not to provide farmers with income support payments. The details of these stories and more are coming up.
This is the Hot 7 Nightly News with Lovelace and Amy Joseph.
Good night. It is Wednesday, the 29th of July, 2020. Welcome to the Hot 7 TV Nightly News on Flow, Channel 117, Kiss FM, the Caribbean Hot FM mobile app, and our Caribbean Hot 7 TV Facebook page. I'm Lovely St. Amy Joseph. Thank you for joining us. The Ministry of Health has disclosed that over the last few months, people who have been granted home quarantine have not been adhering to the protocols. All individuals in home quarantine are required to stay indoors for 14 days. As such, further restrictions on home quarantine have been instituted with immediate effect. The announcement came from the Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Sharon Belmar-George.
Anyone found in breach of home quarantine will be immediately taken to government quarantine to complete the time. Under this act, the police officers have the duty to enforce compliance. It also states that they may arrest without a warrant any person whom he or she has reasonable cause to believe has committed any offense. The public is asked to cooperate and encourage family members and friends who have returned from overseas and are presently in quarantine to remain at home for the 14-day duration.
The names of all people in home quarantine are forwarded to the Royal St. Lucia Police Force to assist with compliance. The public is advised to alert the nearest police station or call the Ministry of Health and Wellness at 468-5318 or 468-5349 with information in relation to anyone who breaches home quarantine guidelines. 28-year-old Naim Akim Denver Morrill of Agard Mondidor was charged today, the 29th of July 2020, for causing the death of Emmanuel Morrill between 3 p.m. Wednesday, the 22nd of July, and 7:20 a.m. Friday, the 24th of July, at Agard Mondidor. The accused killer is the nephew of the victim. He allegedly stabbed his uncle multiple times about the body. He was found in a pool of blood inside his home on Friday, the 24th of July. Hot 7 spoke to the mother of the deceased following the gruesome crime.
Since during the week that the boy, Naim, the one that killed him, my grandson, I've been giving problem, and I kept on saying, well, I'm going to call the police. And I say, well, maybe, and I tell him, behave himself. Behave himself, you cannot keep on attacking people in the yard. Behave, because I see him go up the step before Cutlass, asking Marvin for money. I said, well, for the sake of his mother, well, leave that alone. I will not call the police. We haven't seen Marvin for about 2 to 3 days. So the other brother, Alvin, went down the road this morning and he come back up telling me, Mama, I want to tell you something. I said, what? He kept on telling me, I want to tell you something. I said, well, tell me what happened. Then he told me that Marvin died down there. Then Paul, the other brother, Paul, come and tell me, well, from day before yesterday, so Naim was down there before Hammer and a Cutlass and a light. Then he asked Naim, what is it he's doing down there at this hour?
One day after the release of a voice note that sparked media fodder, the chairman of the cannabis movement, Andre De Carey, has announced his resignation. Subsequent to the government's announcement of St. Lucia's progression to a draft legislative framework for a cannabis industry, De Carey explains that the decade-old advocacy organization has served its purpose. Therefore, his job is done.
Chairman of the cannabis movement, Andre De Carey, has announced his resignation with immediate effect. This came in the wake of the Commerce Minister's announcement that the Cabinet had authorized the drafting of a legislative and regulatory framework for a cannabis industry in St. Lucia, but not the immediate decriminalization or full legalization. De Carey noted that given the organization's mandate, his job as chairman had been completed.
I would like to take this opportunity to announce that as of today, the 29th of July 2020, I'm resigning my post as chair of the cannabis movement. The organization was formed almost a decade ago as an advocacy group pushing for cannabis law reform. On Monday, the 27th of July 2020, the Cabinet decided to legalize. And as a result, my job here is now over. I must now focus on assisting with policy development, getting the co-op off the ground, and creating a viable cannabis industry for the people of St. Lucia.
The former chairman left a few words of advice to the government as it moves towards the decriminalization and legalization of cannabis.
In order for the government to achieve maximum political mileage from this decision, I encourage them to decriminalize on Emancipation Day, the 1st of August, this Saturday. The people are excited, and a move like this would show that this government is truly serious and not playing politics with the people. It makes absolutely no sense to continue arresting people during the interim, well knowing that we'll be legalized within 3 or 4 months. And a directive to continue the status quo will only cause ridicule and anger and lose more votes.
De Carries thanked all stakeholders who contributed to the success of the cannabis movement under his leadership. He says the outcome of this revolutionary juncture could result in St. Lucia's economy emerging from the COVID-19 pandemic stronger than it went in. Jacques Wooding, Hot 7 News.
Meanwhile, the ICAR president, Aaron Alexander, says the cannabis movement has indeed served its time, and he has unveiled plans for a new cannabis education program.
President of the Ayanola Council for the Advancement of Rastafari, Aaron Alexander, says the resignation of cannabis movement chairman Andre De Carries has made it quite evident that the cannabis movement is no longer relevant to the future of cannabis reform in St. Lucia. As the nation's leaders await the release of a draft legislation from the chambers of the Attorney General, Alexander says ICAR is also in preparation mode.
From ICAR's perspective, I think probably the cannabis movement have actually outlived its time, and it has done its work, and we are now very much focusing on establishing the THC, pun intended here. The THC is the substance in cannabis, as you know. The THC is the substance within cannabis that gives you that high. So we are moving on a very high note right now. So the Herbal Cooperative, we call it THC.
According to Alexander, the Herbal Cooperative THC will focus on ensuring that all educational bases in regards to cannabis reform are covered. He says the entity will also take up the responsibilities previously held by the cannabis movement if necessary.
We are now looking at the THC as taking up that role and having a component, an educational component within the cooperative to do some advocacy if it becomes necessary again. But I think the cannabis movement has actually outlived its time.
He says that the membership of ICAR is satisfied with all that was accomplished by the cannabis movement under the leadership of Andre De Carries. But it is now time for this chapter to close and a new one to begin. Jacques Wooding, Hot 7 News.
Former Agriculture Minister and SLP point person on agriculture, Moses Jabatis, is taking the government to task for the treatment of farmers who on Tuesday were told that they do not qualify for the income support cash payments, but would instead be receiving agricultural inputs. A group of farmers made their disappointment and anger with government officials clear on Tuesday. The farmers turned up to the Ministry of Agriculture expecting an income support payment of $1,500. They say this is exactly what they had been promised as part of the income support program, a breakdown of $500 for a period of 3 months. Things did not go as planned, and a group of farmers were livid about the announcement that they were only eligible to receive agricultural inputs like seedlings or equipment like water tanks in some cases. The St. Lucia Labour Party's spokesperson on agriculture and former Agriculture Minister Moses Jabatis is in solidarity with the farmers, calling the treatment on the part of the government disrespectful.
The government continues to show disrespect to farmers, fishers, and producers by the manner in which COVID-19 income relief to them is being handled. Farmers and fishers, along with other producers and entrepreneurs, all suffered as a result of the COVID-19 related closures of their businesses. It is a fact that many of these St. Lucians have lost income and are having a difficult time paying their bills and struggling to recover. Like other businesses and individuals, fishers, farmers, and other producers need cash support now.
Shabante says it is unacceptable that the arrangements for these producers are mired in confusion and controversy.
This is yet another indication of a confused government whose priorities are not that of our people. The St. Lucia Labour Party calls on the government to immediately make arrangements to provide the cash support which is so badly needed to these hard-working St. Lucians. The government has access to over $77 million, which was intended for income support due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The $77 million must be used for just that. The Labour Party calls on the government to urgently address the concerns of farmers, fishers, and other producers as they are having difficulty at this time, and everybody needs support.
On Tuesday, the Director of Implementation in the Office of the Prime Minister, Nancy Charles, indicated that financial aid has only been made available for specific agricultural sectors, with plans for greater inclusion in the future. Livestock farmers qualify to receive various feeds and rearing inputs, and crop farmers qualify for seedlings, fertilizers, and irrigation assistance. You're watching the Hot 7 TV Nightly News. Still to come, staff at the Boys Training Center gift the mother of a former ward a home they built themselves. Earl Huntley on the legacy of his former university mate Owen Arthur. And a heartwarming serenade for a former self-dubbed tourism worker. That and more after the break.